Let's get started. All right. So today's gathering is going to be presented to you all by the BCC management team. This year's theme is moving forward with intention. And so we want to share a little bit with all of you about ways that we do that, and then hopefully learn ways that you do that so that we can all do a better job of that. So here are management team members. There's myself. I'm the executive director of the Wetlands Discovery Center, Dr. Rachel Doherty, who's the assistant director for programming and special projects over at the Center for Louisiana Studies at ULL. And we have Maida Owens, who's the Folk Life Program Director of the Louisiana Division of the Arts, and Dr. Gary LaFleur, the R.E. Miller Endowed Professor of Honors Studies over at the Center of Bayou Studies at Nicholls State University. This is sort of our disclaimer statement. We do not advocate for any particular adaptation strategy or management strategy. We're here to discuss all of these issues and options together to try to figure a few of these things out for us. Another thing that's important to us that we want to share with all of you is why should we include culture in planning? And so we have three main points here that we list. Culture provides a sense of well-being and community connections that help people to adjust and adapt to disruption, including not having running water when there's a huge snowstorm. People with strong ties to culture and community support report higher life satisfaction. And then also culture is a source of social cohesion. A big thank you to our partners who make this program possible. The Center for Bayou Studies over at Nicholls State University, the South Louisiana Wetlands Discovery Center, the Center for Louisiana Studies at the University of Louisiana in Lafayette, the Louisiana Folk Life Program, and the Louisiana Folklore Society. And of course, we couldn't do any of this work without our funders. A big thanks to the National Endowment for the Arts, Restore the Mississippi River Delta, BETNEP, that's the Barataria-Terrebonne National Estuary Program, the M.J. Sindler Family Fund for Culture and Media, the Louisiana Office of Cultural Development through the Division of the Arts, and of course, the Louisiana Endowment for the Humanities. And we also are going to start a new thing this year, and we are going to, as well as highlight some of the passing it on workshops that you've seen in the past that Maida has described to you. We also want to start highlighting, giving a shout out to a few community projects. And so I will hand this over to Shauna to help make this happen or introduce anyone here who's wanting to talk about this, I
I
think
think
so.
Patty's going to take the mic.
Is Patty here?
Patty's
Yes,
here.
I'm here.
Oh, okay, sorry, I could. Hey, Patty, sorry, I
Hey.
couldn't see. I can't see everybody in the room. So welcome, and could you please share us a little bit information about the school?
Yeah, happy to share. So, École Pointe-aux-Champs was approved by the state legislature in 2022 as a state special school. And this occurred because Terrebonne Parish School Board voted to close the Pointe-aux-Champs Elementary School in 2021. That school was 70% Native American, the highest percentage of Native Americans in the state attending a school. And most of the students who attended the school were primarily French speakers, either Indian French or Cajun French, coming from Indian French or Cajun French speaking families. And the tribe had several times requested French immersion at this school because we have a high rate of speakers in our community who remain. And I would allege like one of the highest rates in the state of actual community that maintains the French language. That there's a law that allows this request to happen, and then the district is supposed to engage with the parents in open immersion schools. But that was rejected by the school district numerous times. And then we also submitted a charter application, which was rejected by the school district. But the state unanimously approved École Pointe-aux-Champs. And so once that was approved in 2022, there was some funding that was allocated but it wasn't allocated until 2023. So we opened our doors in 2023, first at Vision Christian, and then it moved to our tribal building. And then the KCs in Pointe-au-Chien gave the KC building to the tribe. It was heavily damaged by Hurricane Ida. We fixed that building. And so the school is currently in the old KC Hall. That's what these pictures are from. We started with kindergarten and first. This year we expanded to pre-K to second grade. And then next year we will be moving into the old Pointe-au-Chien Elementary School. That building was also damaged by Ida. They have one building that's totally destroyed, has to be redone, another building which needs to be fixed. But we have two buildings that we just broke ground to start repairing just in January 6th, and we hope to have that done by the end of May because we need more space to add more students. So we'll be adding students every year. We'll be adding another year onto the school. And so we're really excited about this and to have the support to rebuild and have a safe place for our students, because having these social institutions are very important. One thing I just want to note about the school is that we include the local French language. So not just French, but local French, the Indian French, and Cajun French. So thank you for allowing me to share.
Thank you for being here. Shauna, you wanted to say so? I didn't mean to cut you off. If you were saying...
No, that's great. And Patty, just remind folks that how they could get kids to enroll and when enrollment is, and remind them that I believe it's open to any child. And you want to address that?
Yeah, any child in Terrebonne or Lafourche can enroll in Ecole Pointe-au-Chien. We did get a school bus this year, very exciting, and so there is a route for that. We cannot yet provide lunch until we get into a building that has a cafeteria. So that's sometimes a challenge for parents, but it's very much supported by the local community. And I'm on the nonprofit board, which is helping with the school rebuild. But we also have a school board, which is mostly local people and some state folks. And I think the French Council also has an appointee to that.
And would you stick the website down in the chat for y'all?
Yes, I will do that.
Thank you so much for that, Patty. And in particular, I have a 3-year-old who's turning 4 pretty soon that I'm intending on registering for the pre-K group, and very excited to have him be a part of that. I drove by, maybe it was before the snowstorm, right before the snowstorm, and I saw people working on the school. So I was pretty excited about that too. Congratulations to y'all. Thank y'all for doing all of that work and for being persistent. And for leading with intention, which is what this whole year is about. So we can't thank you enough for all of your work and for all of the work that your team has done, the school board has done. Thank you very much for that. All right. So today's agenda, again, we'll have our speakers today, or our management team. We'll have a brief question and answer period after that. We're changing the Hope for the Coast this year for a question that's more focused about intention. So when we get to that part, you'll see that there's something new that we're creating there. We'll have working group updates, we'll give announcements, and then we'll have an informal discussion until 1:30. So we hope that you'll stick around and join us for that. And so, yeah, no further ado, I'll hand this back over to Shauna to get us started with our presentation.
I'm so glad we're all here today to be talking about how we're going to move forward in this next year. The question that has guided the BCC since Jonathan, we had our very first gathering, was what would future generations wish that we had done? And one proposal Jonathan made was our trunk of traditions, that we can start intentionally thinking about our trunk of traditions. And so we want to spend a year looking through how people are moving forward to meet this need for what future generations will wish we had done by what we're putting in our trunk of traditions. And the way we put it in is by putting those traditions, giving those traditions as a gift to our family, our friends, and our community. And so we wanted to start, we're going to ask everybody to participate in this, but we wanted to start in our own backyards. So we're going to start with the management team talking about the ways they are going to move forward this year with intention. We're going to start with Jonathan.
Thank you so much for that, Shauna. So these are some of the ways that I implement moving forward with intention. So of course, I mentioned a little bit earlier, I've got this really cute kid that hangs around me a lot of time. And one of the things that is important to me that he does learn Louisiana French, because my mom speaks fluent Louisiana French. I have sort of a broken understanding of it all. And so I'm really hoping that my son is able to speak just as fluent as my mom. So one of the things that we work on each week is, teaching him little French phrases. And the other thing that I'll share with all of you about doing things with intention is it also takes effort and it takes a little bit of planning. And it's not the easiest way to do things or get things done. For example, I could just say in my head, all right, well, Monday I'm going to teach him bonjour and have him repeat that over and over. But ultimately, it's going to snow and I'm going to have to deal with that and want to go play in the snow and make a snowman. And I might forget those things. And eventually, I'm completely off schedule. And although I had a good like I had a good thought that, yeah, I'm going to do this without having a concrete plan. It doesn't quite work as good as you would hope. And so learning Louisiana French is very important. I want him to understand that. The other thing is volunteering. And so being a part of his community. And so again, I say that it takes effort. I could juice those blackberries much quicker and with less mess than letting him participate in that. But he's also learning skills that I think are good skills that he should have. But he also knows that the juice that we make in those by juicing those blackberries, that he also helps to pick, by the way, and eat a lot. That juice goes to make the blackberry dumplings, which he also gets to taste at the festival. So he can see that full circle participation. And the other thing, of course, is foraging. We used to not, it was not one of my family traditions to harvest elderberries, but they grow in our backyard. And it wasn't until, this is another beautiful thing about this group. It wasn't until I really talked to Maida about her harvesting of elderberries. When I was a kid, I was nervous to eat things because I thought they were poisonous and would kill me. Little did I know that they're medicinal. And so I want my son to grow up understanding the medicinal properties of those plants. We pick those berries, we boil them down into a juice, we freeze them into cubes. And then whenever he gets a little sniffle, one of those ice cubes goes in his juice cup. And he knows that that's the medicine that goes into his juice because he's helped to prepare all those things. And Gary's really great too. I appreciate Gary so much because you have also taught me about things that we can forage that I was not. I mean, we forage thistles and dewberries and stuff like that, but there's a whole world of things that you can eat in your backyard that I'm learning now that I'm able to teach him so that he's comfortable with knowing what he can eat and what he can't. So I think that you, by passing these traditions on, we become the teachers of that information. And if we're going to teach it properly, we really need to know it inside and out. Those of you who have taught know this. You really have to know your lessons and your material so that way when your students ask you those questions, you can answer them intelligently or say, give me a second, I'm going to find out that information. So I have to say that by doing these things intentionally, this has reconnected me to my traditions in a way that is much deeper than I anticipated. And it's also helping me to learn new traditions that are important from this area that I want to see passed on. And the last picture of him is eating a cucumber that we had just picked from our garden. My people are gardeners. You know, my grandparents always had the most beautiful gardens. And I remember growing up and being young, one of my favorite memories, aside from eating satsumas, was eating warm tomato and cucumber salads because we had just picked them from the garden and cut them and put them in the bowl, and they still had the warmth of the sun. And so it was really important for me that my son grow up having those experiences as well, and then knowing where his food comes from, and then knowing how to, we make okra gumbo because we grow the okra in our own garden. My garden right here was toward the end and really in need of some weeds, so please don't judge me on that. If y'all ever had a 2-year-old, I mean, he's almost 4, but he was 2 in that picture. If you ever had a 2-year-old, you know it's hard to do your gardening chores. But so again, I'd just like to end with saying that doing things with intention is a little bit extra work, but it's work that truly pays off, and it reconnects you to those traditions in a much more meaningful way than just going about it in your everyday life. So thank you for letting me share that with all of you.
Thank you, Jonathan. We're going to switch over to Rachel now. And if y'all haven't met Rachel Doherty in person, she's fantastic. And she has spent her whole career learning about, she's not from Louisiana, but she has come down here and adopted Louisiana as home. And she has spent her career learning about Louisiana literature, particularly Francophone literature and Francophone identity. Now let's find out how she's moving forward with intention with that background.
Thanks, Shauna. I'm going to talk about transmission of knowledge and culture to my daughter. So it's a good jumping off point from what Jonathan was saying. But yes, I have integrated into Cajun culture. I live in Lafayette. I've always lived in Lafayette since I came here to go to graduate school for Francophone studies and Louisiana French. And because of that career choice, but also because of this community in Lafayette and then some of the surrounding villages of Acadiana. I find that in my personal life, but also just in my social and community life, there's constant transmission of Cajun and Creole folklore surrounding celebrations. A lot of because I work in public humanities and I've taught French at various levels in this community. But my experience with intentionality around these local traditions, it comes from my work, but it's this organic cultural integration process that just happened since 2012, whenever I came here. So because I live in Lafayette, where we are very privileged in so far as we have multiple institutional and community resources in French in this region. So there's an infrastructure to support raising a bilingual child and transmitting Cajun and Creole celebration practices. So I wrote a PhD on Louisiana French literature and folklore, and the community around this university has a strong folk life culture surrounding oral traditions because we do have the institution of the French table. That's everywhere in Louisiana, but we have a lot of French tables in Lafayette. We have French interpretive materials at cultural centers. We have French music and festivals. Y'all know that's what we're known for. And celebrations for holidays revolve around traditional languages a lot of times, because of that, because of this folk life. So oral traditions and folk tales and customs and rituals are often integrated into language classrooms. And that's true for university students. I was one for a long time, but I also taught French language. I've always used folk life in the classroom to talk about traditions and stories, whether I was teaching children or adults. So integrating into Louisiana Cajun and Creole culture through language learning and through organizing celebrations, and volunteering, like what Jonathan was talking about, this has created for me and my daughter an environment that's natural and cultivated to where my child can learn French and Cajun folk tales and stories about the customs that we're doing. So we try not to limit these interactions to just our local community. We try to branch out when we can. So I have a picture on the slide of Matilda, that's my daughter's name, at Rougarou Fest with Dr. Gary LaFleur there. She volunteered at Rougarou Fest in Homa that year. She volunteered to run the kids games, which are like ring toss and beanbag toss, but they're themed like tatais. So it's like the Dutin, the Rougarou, and different like monsters of these kids games. So Matilda was raised volunteering at festivals, French language festivals, particularly like Festivals Acadien et Creole here in Lafayette. And she wants to be a festival volunteer for celebrations that revolve around her culture. She was born here, so she claims a Louisiana French culture as her own. And creative placemaking and enacting folk life are just like normalized for her. These are values that she's observed since birth. And she feels like she has agency in that culture because she speaks the language. So I've been speaking French to her since she was born, but she speaks Louisiana French, or she speaks French, but she understands Louisiana Creole with absolutely no problem because she's just grown up around it, even though we don't speak Creole at home. So she can sing the songs, she can do the rituals, but mostly for her, what's important is that she can tell the stories. She can explain the significance and origins of celebrations. And so French immersion schools, unlike what the goal and the model is for École Pointe-aux-Chenes, like Patty was just saying, they are not environments that are Cajun or Creole. So they're American schools, usually with European teachers, and there are a few Cajuns who teach in French immersion schools in our area. But my daughter, because we're in this community of Cajuns and Creoles, she does community theater in French with the Cajun poet Kirby Jambon. So he is a teacher and he's from Lafourche Parish. And in that area, the character of Madame Grandois is important. So she's a mythological character around that you hear about around Christmas time a lot. She's sort of a witch who might bring New Year's Eve gifts, or she might pull your toes like the Rougarou, depending on where you're from. But so for my daughter, this is a character that she knows because I've told her about this folktale. But also at the research center where I work, we have a children's book on the topic, and she's read it. But Matilda, my daughter, she's also been to French tables. So she has heard people from Ville Platte talk about this character. And she knows people from down the bayou who've talked about this character. And so because she's been in these environments where there's a storytelling culture, like at French tables, and there are interpretive centers where people can get together to speak French about this. But because we have institutions like Cajun Theater and French immersion schools and the Center for Louisiana Studies, the whole community, as well as me as an individual, we can intentionally pass down folklore and folk life customs to the next generation. And so the class that Matilda takes for theater with Kirby Jambon is a playwriting. The kids come up with their own plays. So Matilda, this was a Christmas play. She wanted to be Madame Grandois. So here she is dressed up as Madame Grandois. This was the character that she invented for her. And she wrote the character and then she had to audition for it, but she got the role. So Yeah, she, because of infrastructure and because I've intentionally made folklore and language part of my life, she can then transmit these things among her peer group with school children. So yeah.
Thank you, Rachel. That's I'm going to turn this next to somebody most people know, Maida Owens. Maida, you're muted.
All right. I want to make sure that my grandchildren know how to cook from scratch. That's a big thing with me. Now, I want to admit that I have had phases in my life where I was the busy working mom, and I definitely used convenience foods. But especially for holidays and suppers and such, I really enjoy cooking from scratch. And so this is something I want my grandchildren to learn. Now I came from, I'm third generation South Louisiana, but we are not French, Spanish, you know, we're Anglo-German, originally from North Louisiana and Mississippi. But food, of course, is important to them, but not on the scale as it is in South Louisiana. My grandmother was a fabulous baker, and I learned how to make cakes from scratch from her. But how I learned how to really appreciate the food and the creativity that goes into cooking was from my mother-in-law. I married into a Cajun family, and you know, my father-in-law would bring home all the above, you know, fishing, crabs, squid, everything. And I was there when he would come home, and we would put all that up. You know, that's how I always referred to it, as let's put it up. And so my mother-in-law was the type of woman who could serve 16 with an hour's notice because of what she had on hand, and you know, just pulls out stuffed crabs and such. So I really got into this. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And now as my grandchildren are growing up, I want to make sure that they are have that same love of food and creativity, because it was my mother-in-law's major outlet. They were Bergerons. We actually said Bergerons because they were in New Orleans. Now my grandson has been more interested in making gumbo, and you know, I would invite them to help me. And my granddaughter was standoffish. She didn't, her thing was baking. And so she would be in the room while I was teaching Oliver, but Rosie didn't really pay attention. So at Thanksgiving, I said, well, Rosie, you want to do a different kind of baking? It's not sweet, but let's make cornbread from scratch and then make cornbread dressing. And that's what we did. And it was so much fun because she totally got into it. They're 14 and 11 now. And I look forward to cooking a lot more often with them.
That's wonderful, and I appreciate that. And mostly what we've been hearing about are transmissions within families, but Rachel did mention how important it is to have institutions that support you. But we're going to switch to a very different kind of commitment that Gary LaFleur is making for the upcoming year. It's a commitment he's made many years from now, and he is not working with his family, but rather with a much broader group of people. Gary.
Thanks, Shauna. Yeah, I like to use Grand Isle as a backdrop for some of the things that I teach. And one of the ways that I do that is I bring Nicholls students, either undergrads or grad students, to Grand Isle to meet the elementary school students. And this is done with Jean Landry at the Nature Conservancy and the Department of Wildlife and Fisheries. What we do with the students is we teach them a very simple lesson about the island. They live on the only inhabited barrier island of Louisiana, which has a front and a middle and a back. Next slide. So this is that lesson. The young students might not have heard it, but actually it helps kind of cement this into the minds of the grad students as well. And that is, the front of a barrier island is very different from the ecology of the middle of a barrier island. And the middle of Grand Isle often goes unnoticed and forgotten for people who visit Grand Isle. This is what we call a mesic chenier forest. And birders know about it and people on the island know about it, but a lot of tourists that go for the beach, they don't realize the treasure of the forest. So we make sure the students can see the difference between the beach and the energy of the beach, and then the solitude of the forest where you can hear things. And then when you get to the back of the island, that's the marsh. So these are three different parts of a barrier island, and we kind of bring that idea home with the students. Next slide. Of course, this is kind of the work that we do. But then I have this fear, I've heard it from students. Sometimes they go on a field trip and they say, "Yeah, we were in a swamp. I don't really know where we were." It's easy for that to happen. So I want to make sure our college students know about Grand Isle. There's like all kinds of lessons in Grand Isle. There's books written by Lafcadio O'Hearn and Kate Chopin that are important from the history of Grand Isle. But there's also like lessons in the land. So if you look at the painting on the bottom here, this was a painting by Janin. And he painted almost bragging about how they're clearing away the forest in Grand Isle to make room for little houses. But now we know Grand Isle is the only forested barrier island that we have left, really. So they didn't cut down the whole forest. This reminds us that almost accidentally, Grand Isle saved itself by saving its trees. Next slide. And then what you can see, if you come off the beach and go into the forest, is, there's new buildings on the beach, but in the forest, that's where the 100-year-old houses are, right? Sometimes these don't have families in them anymore, but you can see the preservation of the architecture, and you can also see, you can get the lesson that the trees more or less protected the houses. And so the lesson there is, don't cut down the trees, preserve the trees, and also maybe don't build on the beach. Maybe build in the middle of the island if you can. Next slide. And then before we leave, I always try to pay homage to some of the cemeteries on the island. And most people on the call have probably walked around cemeteries because Grand Isle has a lot of history. You can find graves of some of Lafitte's crew people, the people that served with Lafitte as the Baratarians. You can find graves of the people who died in the hurricane of 1893. Those are the older graves to the bottom left. And even new memorials about the BP oil spill, where 11 people lost their lives, including a person from my hometown. That's Blair Manuel, otherwise known as Keith Manuel from Eunice. And so I try to make sure students get a feel for the history of the island, the ecology of the island, as well as meeting the elementary school students. And this is a way that I teach a lesson that's not in the textbook, but it's kind of like my intention of just making sure our students learn from what we have right here in Louisiana that's easy to access if you intentionally get them there. That's it from me.
Thanks, Gary. I have loved these presentations, and I just wanted to point out a couple of things to sort of see a through line here. I wanted to point out that passing something on or figuring out how you move forward with intention is not one skill set. People are doing it through storytelling. People are doing it through foodways, doing it through the festivals that are around us. As Rachel said, through the institutions that we have. We're doing it through the audiences we have, like students. We're reaching out to new audiences, like elementary students. We are doing it through learning new things. Jonathan didn't grow up knowing to harvest elderberries. Rachel did not grow up knowing French folk tales. Maida did not grow up knowing how to cook cornbread dressing from scratch, or maybe she did, but a lot of things from scratch she did not know. She did not. That's what I thought. Gary did not grow up knowing about Chenier forests. And frankly, as a fisheries biologist, that is probably not what most of your training in college focused, in graduate school focused on. These are things that you had to intentionally go out and learn. I know that Gary also does a lot of harvesting. Um, um, and all of us move forward with intentions, with our own, not only our own skill sets, but our own capabilities. Jonathan asked me to say what I was going to move forward with intention on. And one of my skill sets that I have been using for the past couple of years and will continue to use is I write grants that try and fund organizations and groups that are doing this important work. And I've stepped back from my university work, and I'll be focusing in 2025 full time on trying to help groups and institutions who are doing this work. So that's mine. It's not as exciting as other people's, but it is hopefully a way to move forward. So here's what we would like. We would like all of you to join with us in doing this. We would like this community to all move forward with intention. And at the end of the year, we're going to have a discussion where some of your work this year will be featured. And right now, I'm going to turn it over to Jonathan, and he's going to ask everybody to start posting in the chat. It's time to move forward with intention. We want to know what's on your mind and what you would like to see. Jonathan.
Yeah. So one of the things that is important is to know that it takes effort. Yeah. You want to say hello to everybody? So, yeah, this is the wonderful things that you can get from working from home. Can you go ask Leslie for her help, please? Yeah, he's asking me for some help over here. It would be very easy to not educate my son on the French language, right? Give me a second, bud. And so if I wouldn't put forth the intention and the effort, he would not have any idea of what those words meant, and it would end with him. But with that added effort, with having the French school available for him, we can do some of that healing that, if y'all remember, Dick's talked about in a previous presentation about the necessity of all of that. So let me go on with a little bit information on our working groups. So we've got the French language preservation group that meets on the second Tuesday of the month at 6 p.m. Thank you to those conveners, Ivy and Amy. That's also the cultural and coastal planning group that meets every other Monday at 2 p.m. We're still looking for a convener for that group. Artists and Tradition Bearers meet the third Wednesday of the month at 7 p.m. Thank you to those conveners, Lauren and Charles. Protecting Collections meets the third Thursday of the month at 2. The convener there is Pud. And then Preparing and Receiving Communities meets the third Tuesday of the month at 2. And the convener there is Madeline. So thank you so much to the conveners for bringing those groups together. If you have any questions about those groups or how to get in touch with them, please leave us a message in the chat, or you can email us. So very excited about next month. Our gathering is going to be Friday, February 21st, again at noon. And we have Jennifer Morrison, who will be with us, who's an assistant professor in the Department of English at Xavier University. So please make sure to look out for those announcements so that you could register for that. Any announcements from our group that any of you guys would like to share? You can raise your hand or share anything with us.
I got
All right.
something.
Yes.
We are having the Bayou Studies Symposium down the bayou. That's at South Lafourche High School on Saturday, February 15th. And at the Bayou Studies Symposium, you're going to hear things kind of similar to what BCC is interested in. It'll be slightly more academic, but community members are welcome to come. We'll be having several talks and posters, and there's no charge, but it helps if you register. And so the way to find the registration is to look for Center for Bayou Studies at Nicholls on the web. That's the easiest way to do it. Hope to see you there.
Gary,
Thank
what
you.
was that date? I was going to put it in the chat.
Yeah, that's February 15th, the day after Valentine's Day, Saturday, February 15th. That's at South Lafourche High School. Thank you for doing that.
You know, too, one of the things that I'm realizing and hoping that all of you can stay for the informal part of this is that typically we allow for questions and answers after the presenters present, but I think I was a little bit thrown by being one of those presenters this time and didn't leave space for that. So if you would, please stick around. And we can have a little bit more of that discussion, and we can be here until 1:30. So with no further ado, if there aren't any other announcements, that's gonna.
I have one quick one.
Yes, please, please.
Bonjour tout le monde. Je m'appelle Jeannie, and I love these gatherings. Love to see y'all, and I love the stories about Louisiana French and our children and grandchildren. Anyway, Louisiana Folk Roots is hosting the annual Dewey Balfa Cajun and Creole Heritage Week, March 24th through 28th. That will be in Eunice again for the third year in a row. This year we are kicking off on the Monday with National Park Service. They're going to be reopening in Eunice. Their Prairie Cultural Center has been closed for at least 4 years, but it's reopening on February 28th, and they'll be hosting a Louisiana French Day as a kickoff to Balfa Week. So Colby Lejeune, who is in the Francophone Studies program at UL Lafayette, will be one of the co-hosts of that, along with some other Louisiana French speakers on the Monday. But bien voir, y'all. Merci.
Thank you so much for that.
Jeannie, do you want to post that in the chat?
Yes, ma'am, I will.
Any other announcements? Anything that you guys would like to share with us? All right. All right. So, well, this will conclude the formal part of our presentation today.